The building at 3rd and K rested like a tired ship in a glass harbor, its lobby a quiet sea of marble that reflected stray constellations of exit signs and the sleepless city beyond. Oriol Ramani pushed his yellow cart through the hush, wheels muttering against a seam in the tile, the scent of lemon cleaners slipping into corners where executives left their secrets with their shoes. He timed the swing of his mop to the elevator's chime, a rhythm that made the work feel less like scrubbing and more like keeping time for an orchestra that never looked up from its sheet music. Midnight was an honest hour. It stripped the building of its posture and left it breathing, ribs showing in fluorescent ribs of light. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. On 32, the open office wore darkness like a blanket someone had forgotten to finish. Monitors slept, chairs leaned at angles like questions, and a city of fern leaves stood still in their plastic planters. He could hear the server room's dull, constant exhale behind the frosted door near the kitchenette, a machine's version of prayer. Oriol clicked his mop bucket's pedal and watched clean water blush into suds. He had never liked the word custodian because it hid the weight of keeping, yet he carried it carefully, like a bowl of water too full to spill. Something shifted near the vending machine. A shape pulled itself small, then smaller, as if to fit inside the triangle of darkness between two refrigerators. Oriol's hands paused midair. When his eyes adjusted, the shape became a narrow-shouldered young woman in a blazer several sizes too large, cheeks hollowed by the late hour. She was prying at the coil that held a packet of instant noodles like a stubborn miracle. "Coin jammed?" Oriol asked, his voice low so it wouldn't startle her into breaking. She flinched anyway. Sorry, I'll pay. There's a code freeze at 9, and I haven't eaten since, it's fine." She tried to smile, it came out as apology. "There's a trick," he said. In 2 motions he shook the machine with one practiced hip, then tapped the plexiglass at a point only his years had taught him. Spiral yielded. The packet dropped with the soft applause of a saved evening. Her eyes brightened. "Thank you. I'm Tamsin. Intern." She extended a hand the way people do when they're still practicing adulthood and hope someone will notice them doing it right. "Oriol," he said, shaking carefully. "Night crew." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and glanced at the closed cafeteria door with its polite sign, "After hours access restricted." "I'll just use the hot water tap in the break room." "If that's allowed?" "A hungry person is allowed to eat," he said, and carried his bucket toward the kitchenette with a gesture that invited her to walk beside him. The sensors woke the overhead lights in a soft wave as they entered, bringing the steel appliances into the world one by one. Tamsin tore the plastic, crumbling noodles into a company mug that still wore a price tag. "First week?" he asked. "First day." She laughed, but it couldn't hold. "I messed up a data import and spent 6 hours fixing it so I could pretend I didn't mess up a data import. Tomorrow they demo the feature on stage at the summit, and if the pipeline jams," she made a gesture like a throat closing, "I'll just be the intern who broke breakfast for 1,000 people. I don't even think interns get to be legends." "Breaks show you where the thing wants to bend," Oriol said. "That's a map most people never see." Steam ghosted up from the mug, carrying the scent of chicken flavor and fluorescent light. He found a pair of wooden chopsticks in a drawer of abandoned cutlery and washed them. Tamsin tried to protest, he rinsed them anyway. The silence that settled between them wasn't empty, it held the small trusts that people exchange when they live on opposite edges of a day. If the building had a heartbeat, it beat in the server room. Through the frosted glass, a rectangle of blue swelled and dimmed. Oriol found his eyes returning there by habit. He had never belonged to the ranks who wore keycards on retractable cords like lanyard pride, but he was the kind of person who learned the whispers of hinges and the moods of elevators. The building told him things, not secrets, exactly, but the edges of secrets, their shadows on the floor. "Why were you still here this late?" Tamsin asked, mouth full, the question coming out brave because she didn't know yet what questions supervisors allow. "Some floors complain if I visit when they're awake," he said, smiling. "So I come when the floors are asleep." She laughed for real then. It was short, and it made a tired warmth move through the room. She ate faster. The way she looked at the noodles was the way people look at the first $10 that keeps the lights on one more week. Halfway through her mug, something clicked in the server room. Not the steady metronome of fans. More like a lock adjusting itself in a dream. The blue rectangle quivered, briefly green at the edge. Oriel's skin knew the difference before his mind named it. "You hear that?" he asked. Tamsin froze. "Hear what?" The machine cleared its throat. He nodded toward the door. "Like those old radios when they catch a storm." She set down her chopsticks. "There's a redundancy test at midnight, but that was supposed to be handled by SRE. If they're doing a failover, I should." She checked her phone, notifications bloomed. Okay. Her hands trembled. "I have to watch the dashboards." "Go," Oriel said. "I'll watch the water." She blinked at him, then laughed at herself for not understanding the joke fast enough. "Thank you." She darted to a workstation, woke it, credentials flying from memory into the empty password field like birds finding their nest. A constellation of graphs rose. One line had begun to wander where it should have held a straight horizon. "CPU thrash on cluster B," she said. "That's not scheduled." "Why would they?" A ping arrived. Then 3. The room went heavy with implications. Oriel wrung the mop out slowly. He did not understand the graphs, but he understood the expression on a person's face when a single wrong vowel can change the whole sentence a life is writing for itself. He knew how one mistake could feel like a funnel that drags every moment after it into its mouth. He had lived long enough with paperwork that pronounced him less than what he had built, trained, survived. And yet he had learned how hands can build a piece the paper never imagined. Behind them, the hallway held its breath. The glass partition made a mirror of itself. If a person stood beyond the angle where reflection hid, they would be nothing but a darker darkness. The building had a way of collecting witnesses. It loved an audience even more than an applause line. "Cluster B is drifting off the load balancer," Tamsin murmured. "If it tips, the recompute job fails, and the demo tomorrow is just a spinning wheel." She swallowed hard. "They'll fire me before I finish my ramen." "They will feed you first," Oriel said. "Then the firing won't hurt until after." He was only half joking. Kindness delayed pain, but didn't cancel it. He knew this from 100 rooms where bad news entered with hands full of pastries. Tamsin's phone lit with a name, C. Vale. It flashed twice and stopped. She frowned. "The CEO," she whispered, then shook her head. No, that's probably a distribution list." She looked again at the silent server room door as if a person might step out of it the way a ghost argues with a wall. A low alarm throbbed once in the ceiling. It wasn't the fire system. It was an internal note in a song most employees never heard. The glassed-in room released its blue for a moment like a held breath, then returned it in a deeper shade. Oriel felt the change along the bones of his forearms. "Do you have access?" he asked. Tamsin hesitated. "No. But I can page someone who does. If they answer." She typed with the urgency of prayer. "There's a procedure, but I don't know if I'm allowed." "The building is asking," he said gently. "Sometimes asking is permission." She let out a breath, stood, and approached the frosted rectangle. The badge reader blinked red at her. She looked back at Oriel, then down at the tiled floor where his mop had left its quiet shine. "I can prop it," Oriel said. "Just enough to be eyes without being hands." "You'll get in trouble," she said. "I seem to be the kind of person buildings forget to punish," he said, rolling the cart toward the door. "They think I belong with the pipes." He eased the cart just so, while nudging the jamb. The door yielded. A hush poured out, the thick quiet of money stored as heat. Racks blinked like city windows. The air held the metallic clarity of a mountain lake in winter. Tamsin stepped to the threshold and swallowed. "It's colder," she whispered, as if afraid to fog the data. "Machines like thin air," he said. They run their whole lives to stay cool. She nodded at the frontmost panel where a column of green LEDs had developed a flutter, like a throat remembering a cough. Her phone buzzed again, no response yet. Urgent. Please advise. I'm not supposed to be here, she said to the floor. But if I don't stay, something breaks without a witness. Oriol understood that sentence as if he had written it. He had mopped around people his whole life, so many people who did not believe their footsteps left anything but illusion on the floor. He knew what it meant to be the only one to see a moment put its weight down. He kept one hand on the cart and one on the door so it would not shut her in. She leaned over the console to read a display. The text marched like ants, patient and terrible. Kill switch engaged, she said. No way. She traced a path on the touch surface that reminded him of how his mother used to bless the air above a bowl before serving it. The screen answered with a permission error. Someone's toggled a staged shutdown, she said, the word someone making the room colder. But the play sheet says nothing like this until dawn. Could it be a test? He asked. It could, she said. It could be a lot of things. But the logs say the action came from an account that hasn't been used in months and also happens to be, she gulped. The CEO's. Maybe the CEO works at night, Oriol offered, as gently as the situation allowed. Maybe, she said. Or maybe someone found an old key. He thought of the master key he carried, a heavy ring that had not increased his authority, only his opportunity to be blamed. He had learned how a key can make you disappear into a lock you didn't choose. Footsteps whispered at the end of the corridor. Not loud enough to be a group. One person, comfortable in not being seen. Tamsin didn't hear, the server room hummed an anesthetic that numbed ordinary senses. Oriol tilted his head, putting the sound into a map only his knights had drawn. Do I roll it back? Tamsin asked the console. No answer. She bit her lip until a bright bead rose. If I do, and I'm wrong, I'll have overridden an executive action. Can you ask a better question? Oriol said, remembering that sometimes survival is in the in-between. Not do I roll it back, but do I buy us 5 minutes for someone to tell me why not? She blinked, then typed, creating a sandboxed pause, a small dam inside a flood. The screen accepted the deferral. She exhaled a breath so long and so careful that Oriol felt the room accept it as a pledge. 5 minutes, she said, and then, because once you buy time, you must decide what to spend it on, I need eyes on the UPS. If it's drifted, this could cascade. She turned, startled to see Oriol still holding the door as if he were a hinge that had taken human form. I'm sorry, I keep asking as if you. I know where they keep the emergency manual, he said. I also know they never read it. He nodded toward a red binder on a top shelf of the kitchenette. Page 19 is a lie. The labels are backwards. She laughed, a sound that hurt and healed the same place in her chest. How do you know that? I watched the electrician swear for an hour last winter, he said. I remember the way a man swears when he realizes his pride is on the wrong page. She climbed on a chair to fetch the binder. He steadied it with one hand as if the night itself might lean. Her phone vibrated. The notification that arrived carried a single line that turned her mouth dry. Do not touch anything. Status, observed. Observed by who? She whispered, nearly to herself. Oriol did not answer. The hallway's silence had shifted. He felt it as surely as a baker feels the exact moment dough becomes bread under his palm. The building was no longer alone with them. It had seated an audience. A figure became a figure only when it moved. At the end of the corridor, where a sliver of light from the stairwell softened the dark, a person separated from the wall and started toward them with the certainty of someone who had walked every hallway in this place before there had been walls to walk. Tamsin's face did a private equation: fight, flight, close the laptop, erase the logs, confess, hope. Oriol stayed very still. The woman stopped 2 paces from the threshold, far enough that the glass continued to hold her reflection like a half-finished portrait. She wore a charcoal coat draped not so much on her shoulders as on her authority. It hung the way gravity behaves around a planet. Her hair was pinned in a knot that had defied the evening. Her eyes took in Oriole, the cart, the door, the intern, the graphs, the binder, all the pieces of a room that had become a statement. "Good evening," she said, voice a calibrated instrument. "You bought us 5 minutes, Ms. Orellana." That was exactly right. Tamsin froze. The sound of her name in that mouth rearranged the room. Miss Vale," she said without meaning to ask. "Cassandra," the woman corrected softly. Names are lighter when they're carried on first terms. Her eyes flicked to Oriole. "And you must be the person who knows which binders lie." "I know which floors complain when I visit at noon," he said. He did not shift his weight. He did not lower his eyes. He had practiced this pose until it became a kind of prayer, dignity that looked like deference from a distance. "Then you know what it costs to listen," Cassandra said. "We have a problem. We also have very little time to avoid an unfixable morning." She stepped into the light just enough that the glass surrendered her reflection and accept her as a body. The left sleeve of her coat bore a faint tear as if it had disagreed with a doorknob earlier. "The shutdown flag you saw," she said to Tamsin, "was indeed thrown by my account. I did not throw it. Someone wants us to arrive at the summit tomorrow with a machine that smiles and refuses to speak." Tamsin swallowed. "Sabotage?" she asked, and hated how the word felt like melodrama in her mouth. Cassandra's mouth tilted in acknowledgement that melodrama is what the truth looks like before it becomes yesterday's memo. "A test of our attention," she said. "One we are currently passing in extra credit." She turned to Oriole. "And you, the building drew me to your footfalls 2 nights ago when the elevator stalled on 21. You told a scared vendor to lean his weight toward the wall so the car would remember gravity. He never saw you leave, but the car did." Oriole said nothing. "Some compliments are just angles in a room, you nod or you bruise." "We're going to fix this," Cassandra said. "But we're going to do it quietly. If I page SRE, someone with the wrong ears will hear. If Ms. Orellana opens a root shell, the wrong eyes will see. There is someone in this building who will profit from our failure at 9 a.m., and I would like them to be surprised." Tamsin stared as if trying to hold 2 realities in one mug. "What do you need?" she said. Cassandra's gaze moved between them the way a conductor looks at the only 2 musicians who remembered to rehearse. "A courier and a witness," she said, nodding to Oriole, in a hand brave enough to press a key at the exact second it terrifies her. She lifted her phone. "I will be your alibi and your shield. But we must retrieve something from my office first." "The 30th floor is badge-locked after 10, Oriole said. "Security logs when a door knows a stranger. They listen when I ask them not to remember," Cassandra answered, and there was no arrogance in it, only a bone-deep familiarity with the architecture of power. "But I would rather no door be asked to lie tonight." "The stairs will do." "Stairs?" Tamsin echoed, already breathless with the idea. "We'll lose time. We'll gain quiet," Cassandra said. "And quiet is faster than alarms." The 3 of them moved like an answer the building hadn't expected. Oriole peeled his gloves off, the snap of latex in the hallway a tiny gunshot that made silence duck. He pushed the cart against the wall so it looked like a parked thought. Tamsin closed her laptop, logged out, the way a person backs out of a room where an argument might start without them. They reached the stairwell. It smelled like concrete that had learned patience and metal that had learned the aches of day-shift shoes. Cassandra set her hand on the railing and didn't look back, as if the only way not to scare the moment was to walk before it remembered reasons to run. 2 flights up, she paused and whispered, "Keep your steps on the outer edge, the sender complains." "Do you do this often?" Tamsin murmured, half a joke because the alternative was to ask what kind of company required its CEO to move like a rumor. "Often enough to know that ladders teach more than elevators," Cassandra said. On 30, a door opened somewhere close with the sigh of a person who has decided to stop pretending. Voices followed, 2, low, discussing numbers as if numbers cannot be hurt. Cassandra lifted a hand. They waited on the landing where the light sputtered in rhythms that did not match the floor below. Oriole listened to the hallway draft, cologne, paper, a mistake stretching out on a couch and making itself comfortable. The voices went the other way. Cassandra led them into an acquisition of darkness. Light arrived slowly as if paying its invoice. Her office door was a single glossy line in a wall of matte. She touched it and it remembered her. Locks are sentimental that way. Inside, the view turned the city into a glittered lie. She did not go to the window. She crossed to a low bookshelf and slid a finger under a copy of a book with a cheerful yellow cover, then lifted the shelf itself like a lid. Beneath, a shallow drawer slept the way a lake sleeps under ice. She removed a plain envelope and a small metal token the size of a coin but heavier in its fact. An offline key, she said softly. Issued to me when the cloud was still a room only 3 of us had a key to. The person who staged this will not expect us to remember that the past keeps its own doors. She slipped the token to Tamsin, the envelope to Oriole. This is the legal letter I'll deny writing if anyone asks. It grants you the authority I lack if I am made to be elsewhere. Don't open it unless you must. I don't want authority, Oriole said before he could untie the sentence. It made Cassandra look at him more carefully. Neither do I, she said. But wanting is not the same as deserving. Tonight we accept what the building needs from us. They were almost back to the stairwell when the light on the security camera flipped from a calm glance to an interested stare. Cassandra stopped. In the same instant, a text arrived on Tamsin's phone. Whose footsteps? The sender's name was just a number, but its brevity smelled like someone paid to be brief. Cassandra took the phone, typed 3 words, and sent them. Tamsin did not see what they were. The camera went bored again. We have 3 minutes, Cassandra said in a voice that did not dramatize mathematics. On 29, the door wouldn't open. Someone had fed it a new rule at supper. Cassandra frowned. He's impatient, she murmured, and in the pronoun there was a constellation of memory, rivalry, and a ledger of careful patience. Who? Tamsin asked because the question wouldn't stop knocking. Cassandra considered the truth, then rented it. A person who preferred I run this company at the speed of his fear. She slipped off her coat as if to move more quickly and tucked it through the strap of her bag so it wouldn't forget to come along. The tear at the cuff showed more plainly now, its edge looked like a scar that refused to be made a story. Oriole tried his key ring by habit, not hope. The 7th key found an old instinct in the lock, and the old instinct opened out of respect. Cassandra raised an eyebrow. The building trusts you, she said. It trusts my persistence, he said. They descended the next flight and the next, each landing an audition for their breath. At 26, a hum changed pitch in the walls, a transformer remembering age. The stairwell air turned warm, then warmer. Tamsin pressed the token against her palm as if it might cool her blood. At 24, a guard's radio crackled below like a cricket learning a new song. Copy. Movement on north stairs. 3 bodies. Probably night crew. A pause. Or not. Cassandra looked at Oriole. He looked at the rails as if considering whether metal could keep a secret long enough. There's a service corridor at 23, he said softly. It gets lost behind the conference rooms and finds itself again near the freight elevator. Does it have cameras? Cassandra asked. It has spiders, he said. They don't file reports. They slip through 23's door into the boiled vegetable smell of a hallway that office designers deny exists. The carpet here had given up pretending to be anyone's idea of home. The lights buzzed with an honesty that expensive fixtures cannot afford. They moved quickly. Oriole kept his left shoulder to the wall, geography by muscle memory. He almost missed the handprint on the corner of the whiteboard in Conference B. It was small and set low, as if a child had reached up to prove the world could notice them. But the smear beside it was not dry ink, it was a shine against matte, and in that shine Oriole recognized the way a hand leaves itself behind when it's carrying more than weight. He stopped. What? Tamsin breathed. Someone ran, he said. Recently. Wet hands. No sink nearby. Server room humidifies, Hallway dehumidifies. A person carrying a heat they didn't earn. An intruder, she asked. A ghost who sweats, he said, beginning to understand the shape of a night that wanted to be a test and had become a confession. They reached the freight elevator. Oriole pressed the call button and pressed again until its stubborn light agreed. The doors sighed open. Inside smelled like pallets and trades and the arguments of day. Tamsin felt for a second as if they were standing inside the throat of a machine that might decide to speak them into or out of existence. They rode in silence. Cassandra watched the floor numbers with the same care she watched a board vote. Oriole watched the cables, imagining the weight as a promise. Tamsin counted her heartbeats because counting something is how you don't drown. As the doors opened on 32, the hallway met them with the cool of their first decision. The server room's blue was now a deeper ocean. The binder lay open like a story that had learned a new ending and didn't mind. Token, Cassandra said, and Tamsin handed it to her. Ms. Orellana, when I say now, place it in the reader. Mr. Romani, when I say now, wedge the door and do not let it argue. Oriole nodded. The cart fit the jam like it had been promised a moment all its own. Tamsin held the token above the reader with the reverence of a small sacrament. Cassandra raised her phone, thumb hovering over an app that had likely cost more than Oriole's last 5 cars combined. A footstep sounded behind them. Not the whisper of shoes that wanted to be forgotten, but the deliberate heel of a person who has decided the night belongs to them. Oriole turned. A man stood at the far end of the aisle between workstations. He wore a badge on a retractable lanyard and a smile that believed in itself. His name lived in the first lines of too many emails. He had the look of someone who had learned to be promoted the way vines learn to climb whatever is nearest. Ms. Vale, he said. Burning the midnight budget? He looked at Tamsin the way people look at a wage to be saved on. And who's this? Our facilities poet? Good evening, Lionel, Cassandra said, voice level. We're handling a small anomaly. Is that what we call it? Lionel's eyes flicked to the token in Tamsin's hand and laughed without sound. You'll want to be careful with antique tools. They tend to leave marks. He took one step closer, then another. Also, there's a policy about interns in restricted rooms after hours. And janitorial staff propping server doors with culinary devices. He nodded toward the chopsticks on the counter as if they were a crime. Policy also says we intervene when systems misbehave, Cassandra replied. We're intervening. Lionel said. Then you won't mind if I supervise. Wouldn't want mistakes in the morning. He positioned himself where a single forward lunge could steal the token from Tamsin's hand before she learned what it felt like to say no to him. Cassandra's phone buzzed. She read the screen and went much stiller than the air. He's here, she murmured, too low for Lionel, just enough for Oriole and Tamsin. Our saboteur is either in this room or watching it from a place that's learned to be a room. Tamsin's mouth dried into a desert that used to be a throat. Oriole shifted his weight a hair so that if the night needed a wall it would find him ready. Cassandra lifted her eyes to Lionel and gave him a smile that made a very brave thing in the room step forward inside itself. Now, she said. Tamsin moved. Oriole moved. Lionel moved. The token kissed the reader with a soft metallic certainty. The cart bit the door like a friend who refuses to let you fall. Lionel's hand shot out like the kind of snake that believes in its bite. And the lights in the server room went out. Everything else did not. Something breathed in the darkness that was not a machine. A soft exhale through teeth, closer than the door. Oriole felt the air change as if the room had learned a new shape and decided to wear it. Cassandra's phone screen lit her face into a portrait that would hang in a museum of decisions. Oriole, she said, voice steady in a storm that had just decided it could happen, do not let go of that door. He did not. He could not. The darkness leaned its forehead against the glass like a stranger asking to be let in. Somewhere in the room, a hand found a cable and learned its name by touch. The emergency lights did not come. The building prefers to watch before it helps. Tamsin's next breath found a shape in the dark, and that shape answered with a movement natural only to people who have memorized the geography of other people's blind moments. "Ms. Orellana," Cassandra said, her voice turned to glass and wire, "when your fingers remember the token, you will slide it left, then right, then press twice. Do not rush. If you rush, the door will forget what you asked it to remember." Tamsin swallowed, nodded, forgot that nodding is a thing darkness cannot see, and whispered, "Okay." A sound like fabric yielding, Lionel's shoulder brushing a partition. He was closer now. Too close. "Oriole," Cassandra said again, softer. "In 3 seconds, someone will try to take that door from you." "How many someones?" Oriole asked, measuring the room with an older math. "At least one," Cassandra said. "And possibly the right one." The darkness smiled where he couldn't see it. And then a hand, hot, urgent, human, closed over Oriole's knuckles. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Knuckles. Heat pressed into Oriole's skin through the stranger's grip, the kind that came not from weather but from panic. He kept his shoulders square to the door, feet set in the posture every night had taught him, weight low, knees loose, ready to accept force and give 1 inch at a time only to take back 2. Metal kissed his spine through the door's frame. The server room was a mouthful of dark trying to swallow everything. "Let go," a man hissed, close, the breath of the word slick with impatience. "This isn't your door." "It is tonight," Oriole said, and tightened his hold. A second hand found his knuckles, smaller, cooler. Cassandra. Her palm overlapped the stranger's and Oriole's, as if to fold both intentions into one hinge. "Ms. Orellana," Cassandra said without looking, left, right, then twice. Slow. Tamsin's fingers slid along blind edges until the token clocked into its cradle. The first click sounded like a glass bead dropped on tile. The second like a promise that might remember itself. Somewhere to their right, Lionel shifted his stance, a predator calculating angles in a room that had decided not to be the jungle he'd picked. "Security will be very interested in this," Lionel said conversationally, but his voice carried a threat of strain that gave away the muscle he was hiding. "Unauthorized access. Interference with operational systems. An intern attempting route. A janitor manhandling. The lights will return in 7 seconds, Cassandra said, calm as a physician who hears what a heart tells her through a stethoscope and not through a patient's story. "If they do not, we will continue in the dark until they remember what they're for." "Left," Tamsin whispered. The token eased. "Right." The reader accepted. "Press, once. A breath. Twice." The room inhaled. The blue returned in a flood of electric dusk, poured from strips along the racks like an ocean resuming tide. Emergency lights woke bleary-eyed along the ceiling perimeter, weak as dawn through tired blinds. Enough. Enough to give the shape of things back to the eyes that had earned them. Oriole found himself face to face with the stranger whose heat had tried to pry his fingers open. Not Lionel. This man wore an engineer's hoodie under a blazer that didn't know its place. A badge dangled against his chest. The name on it was cut off by the clip, RAJ____, Senior Systems Reliability. Sweat beaded his temple like a sudden fever. "Back up," Cassandra said to him, and when he didn't, she said it again in a way that changed the grammar of the air. He obeyed 2 steps. "Miss Vale," Lionel said, smoothing his smile into a shape he preferred. "I hope you have a very good story for why we are ignoring protocol so publicly." "We aren't public. We are surgical," Cassandra replied, and nodded at the console. "Ms. Orellana?" "Offline key accepted," Tamsin said, voice pitched low to steady itself. "Shadow flag detected on cluster B, origin, legacy credential, yours." She looked up, frightened to have said it. "I mean, the account in your name." "Of course," Lionel said lightly. "Compromise isn't picky. It tries doors in every hallway." He took a step toward the reader, toward the token. "I'll take that, Ms. Orellana. We'll let the grown-ups." Oriole moved 1 inch, then 3. He did not touch Lionel. He simply arrived where Lionel had intended to be, the way a wall arrives to help a person decide where they're allowed to walk. Lionel stopped. "Mr. Romani," Cassandra said, her tone both thanks and instruction, "hold." To Lionel, "We will not discuss who is a grown-up while a crisis exists. We will solve it. Then we will assign adjectives." The SRE in the hoodie, Raj, cleared his throat. Shame colored his cheeks a darker heat. "I received a directive," he said, not looking at Lionel, not looking at anyone. "Run a staged shutdown on a window between midnight and 2. Assess failover. Report only to the originating thread." It came from an unarchived channel populated by senior leadership accounts. He swallowed. "I thought it was a back channel to avoid panic." "It was bait," Cassandra said. "And you took it because you worried about your job more than your morning. That's an error of fear, not of competence. We can fix the fear." She pointed to the dashboard blooming on the console under Tamsin's hands. "Status?" "Sandboxed pause engaged," Tamsin said. "Kill switch energized but waiting for confirmation. UPS says drift at 2% and climbing. If we don't correct it in 90 seconds, we drop into a cascade. The demo asset becomes a sculpture." "Not a bad one," Lionel said with a small, mean grin. "Spinning wheel is modern." Cassandra did not look at him. "We're not here to curate art. We're here to keep promises." She tapped the console. "We need a cold revoke on the shadow flag followed by a manual rebind on the load balancer. Ms. Orellana can execute with the offline key. Raj, you will mirror her on a disconnected terminal for verification. Mr. Romani, if anyone touches that door before I tell you, you will describe them a lesson in hinges." "I've taught worse," Oriel said quietly. Lionel raised his hands in a pantomime of surrender. "All right. Hometown heroics. But if we burn the cluster, we burn the summit. I assume you're prepared to own that headline?" "I own the building," Cassandra said. "The headlines come bundled." Tamsin placed her fingers where Cassandra indicated. "Cold revoke. Manual rebind." The steps were like tying a complicated knot while someone read the wrong recipe over your shoulder. She felt her heartbeat inside each fingertip, a metronome that wanted to rush. She remembered Cassandra's instruction, "Do not let your hands hurry just because your brain is running." She moved slow. Deliberate. Her breath synchronized with the engine room hush. The UPS tone deepened like a throat clearing to speak a warning in a language made of voltage. 80 seconds. "Look at me," Cassandra said softly to Tamsin. It was a strange request during a crisis. Tamsin did it anyway. Cassandra's eyes were steady. "Clear. You saw the problem before it was a problem," she said. "You bought us time. Now you will buy us the morning." Tamsin nodded. She felt the center of her fear fold inwards like paper making a crane. Her fingers steadied further. "Revoke sent," she said. "Awaiting confirmation." Manual rebind queued. Lionel leaned in again. A moth that couldn't accept a lamp had decided not to burn. "Perhaps we should." "Lionel," Cassandra said, her tone now a scalpel. "Step back." He did, but he made it look like he had stepped back because he wanted to, not because he had to. Some men are proudest of the parts the world cannot praise. The token's light shifted from amber to a patient green. Confirmation. Tamsin exhaled and released a sob that wasn't a sob, just a hard shake of air with a name it refused to keep. Rebind live in 2, 1, now. The balance line on the graph corrected itself with a grace that felt human. The UPS tone relaxed by a note. From somewhere beyond the racks came the sound of a relay deciding not to jump off a cliff. "Stabilizing," Raj breathed, shoulders dropping. "Stabilizing. Good," Cassandra said. "Now, lock the policy so nothing but that vintage key can alter it until 6 a.m. "Done," Tamsin murmured, the muscle memory of competence arriving in her hands like an older sibling finding her after a panic in a market. Lionel clapped once, soft and slow. "Brava." And now we will all report this immediate and improper use of an offline key to compliance, which will, with heavy hearts, recommend termination for everyone involved. Except, of course, the executive who had to be misled by desperate staff. Except, of course, the executive who staged the misdirection, Cassandra replied, turning to him fully for the first time. Tell me, Lionel, was the unarchived channel your idea, or did you borrow it from a previous employer as a departing gift? Lionel's smile did not move. His eyes, for the first time, did. They flickered to the left, toward the conference rooms, and back. It was the look of a man measuring whether a door can still be a door and not a wall. Security, he called suddenly, stepping back and raising his hands with theatrical horror. We have a breach in the server room. Unauthorized access. This janitor assaulted me. The intern compromised credentials. Ms. Vale, he let the sentence dangle like a noose, is a victim of their recklessness. As if summoned by a stage cue, the elevator at the far end of the floor dinged and opened onto two uniformed guards, radios crackling, eyes already filled with someone else's story. They moved fast. Tamsin flinched as one guard's hand hovered near his holster. Raj pressed himself flat to a rack as if he could become a shadow. Oriole did not move. He had learned that when force arrives, stillness can be a language it has to translate. Hands where we can see them, the older guard said. Step away from the door. I can't, Oriole said simply. Not until Ms. Vale tells me to. Cassandra held up her phone, screen bright with a digital seal. Stand down, officers, she said evenly. This is an executive-level intervention authorized under Clause 9.12 of our continuity policy. We radioed compliance, the younger guard said, as if that answered. They said, he glanced at Lionel, they logged an alert. Sabotage attempt. By whom? Cassandra asked. The guard hesitated. Anonymous tip, he said softly. Then here is a signed, non-anonymous letter, Cassandra said, taking the envelope from Oriole's jacket pocket with her name in the lower corner like a witness. She handed it to the older guard. Dated yesterday. It authorizes Mr. Ramani and Ms. Orellana to act under my instruction in a continuity event. If you question its validity, you may call the number printed in graphite on the back. It will ring the lawyer who charges $500 per minute to be obeyed. The older guard flipped the envelope, saw the graphite number, and cleared his throat in a way that meant he imagined the bill personally. One moment. He stepped away to the window, speaking low into his phone. Lionel laughed, a bright, brittle thing. You plan this little paperwork play, Cassandra? Expect me to believe you draft letters to authorize interns at midnight? I expected someone to try my patience, she said. I was not disappointed. Tamsin stood very straight, as if the days of her life were lining up behind her spine. She looked at Oriole. He looked back, a small nod like a hinge that had remembered how to swing. The older guard returned. Whatever he had heard had washed the suspicion from his face the way rain washes chalk off stone. We're good, he said quietly to Cassandra, then to the room at large, everyone calm. Continue your surgery. He glanced at Lionel with something like pity. And you, sir, keep your distance. Lionel's mouth opened and closed. He could not decide which expression would survive this new era. Cassandra stepped closer to Tamsin, lowered her voice. We'll need to flush the ghost channel at the root of this, she said. Raj, can you isolate it? Trace the origin? Raj nodded. His shame had converted itself into rigor. Yes. If I pivot across the non-paginated audit endpoints, I can, he stopped, cheeks coloring. Sorry. Don't apologize for knowing your instrument, Cassandra said. Play. They worked. For 13 minutes the room was a choreography of competence, Cassandra mapping the problem like a general tracing elevation lines, Tamsin executing with a focus that pinned fear beneath quiet, Raj shadowing, verifying, correcting, gaining muscle where he'd lacked nerve. Oriole held the door. He was the hinge in the threshold, the one who made sure what needed to stay closed stayed closed and what needed to stay open could breathe. The graphs settled. The UPS sang a neutral note. The shadow channel blossomed on a monitor in grotesque clarity, constructed from archived accounts, seeded with stolen tokens, process managed through a scheduler Lionel had installed 2 quarters ago as a temporary workaround. The thread's creation timestamp predated Raj's hire by months. The posts were clean of attributions but dirty with style, phrases Lionel had used 100 times in meetings when he wanted credit to stick to him like varnish: nimble failure, stealth resilience, plausible maintenance. Cassandra didn't smile. She did not gloat. She did not announce anything grand. She simply tapped the keyboard 3 times, built a packet of facts, and sent it to the board chair along with a line of text that contained no adjectives at all. Lionel tried one more door. "You can't prove intent," he said, breath quick now that seeing himself in evidence had pressed the room tight. "It was a test. Everything is a test." Cassandra looked at him with an expression Oriole had not seen before. Not anger. Not satisfaction. A complicated grief, as if she were watching a building she'd once hoped could be preserved reveal dry rot behind a wall. "You proved intent for me," she said softly. "By trying to make fear my policy." The older guard stepped gently to Lionel's side. "Sir," he said, "we'll need you to come with us." "For what?" Lionel barked, pulling his arm free. "For doing my job." "For rehearsing your replacement," Cassandra said. "And sabotaging the orchestra to make yourself first chair." She turned to Oriole. "You can breathe now." Oriole eased his grip. Muscles unspooled in a trembling aftermusic. He felt the door stay, felt it accept that it did not need him anymore. He let his hands fall to his sides. They remembered their calluses and did not apologize. Tamsin swiveled, suddenly younger and older in the same frame. "We did it," she asked, not trusting the instruments until a human being made the shape of yes. "We did it," Cassandra said. "And we'll keep doing it until we've taught the morning how to behave." Lionel took one last look around the room as if memorizing exits for a different future. The guards escorted him away, not harshly, but with the quiet finality of people who had carried heavier men down lighter corridors. In the calm that followed, a small, ridiculous sound broke the architecture of crisis. Oriole's stomach growled. It was an ordinary, deeply human noise, and it loosened something in all their faces. "I never finished my noodles," Tamsin said, almost laughing. The CEO saved the cluster before the intern could finish dinner. Is that a headline? "I prefer, people who listen to Buildings Rescue Company from Preventable Embarrassment," Cassandra said dryly, and then her mouth softened. "Eat. Both of you. We have 90 minutes until the summit crew arrives. Then we write the story together." In first person plural. They ate at the kitchenette, microwaved leftovers everyone had abandoned to the after-hours gods, a little too much salt, exactly the right amount of relief. The building exhaled with them in a slower rhythm. It had remembered that humans can carry it, not just the other way around. Cassandra took a call in her office and returned with a quieter face. "The board knows," she said. "They asked 3 questions and then 2 better ones. The answers will live in the minutes. The consequences will arrive before lunch. We won't have to see them eaten." "What about Raj?" Tamsin asked, looking toward the server room where he still worked, determined to repent with accuracy. He really thought he was doing a test. He will come to my office at 10 and tell me how to prevent his fear from being used against him again," Cassandra said. "Then he will implement his own solution. That is the debt, and the forgiveness." Tamsin folded her chopsticks. "And Lionel?" "HR will do their part," Cassandra said. "Legal will do theirs. I will do mine. Which is to write a memo that describes exactly the size of the hole he made and exactly how we will not pretend it isn't there just because we can carpet it." She looked at Oriole. "And you? What do you want?" No one had asked him that in a building like this. The question fit oddly around his ribs, like a shirt he had never tried because window displays do not invite men who mop to try on their clothes. He considered the answer carefully. One must be respectful when the future asks for measurements. I want my crew to have keys that open the rooms we have to clean, he said at last. Without calling 3 numbers and being told we can't be trusted with doors. I want the radios to work in the basements where the air forgets names. I want the emergency manuals page 19 fixed. And I want, he stopped, surprised at himself. Say it, Cassandra said, not as command but as aid. I want the title to say what the job is, he said. Not janitor. Not custodian. The thing itself. Keeper of place. Or something like that. He looked down, embarrassed. People think a place keeps itself. It doesn't. We do. Cassandra's face changed. Then she nodded as if he had told her a password she had been trying to guess for years. Keeper of place, she repeated. Mr. Romani, would you accept that title with a raise that embarrasses the old one? And the authority to decide which keys a building like this should put into which hands? He swallowed. With a crew of my choosing and an apprentice program that pays people while they learn. He had not known he would ask that until the sentence walked out of him like a friend who had been waiting in the hallway, patient, certain. With a crew of your choosing, Cassandra said. And an apprentice program. She looked at Tamsin. And you, tomorrow, when the summit crowd applauds the demo, will stand next to the VP whose suit fits and tell the story of the 5 minutes you bought us. If he doesn't share the stage, I will borrow it. Tamsin colored. I'm just an intern. You're a person we trust to hold a key that older, more expensive hands have forgotten how to carry, Cassandra said. Intern is a season, not a measurement. The building brightened by degrees as automated systems rehearsed sunrise. Cleaners arrived on lower floors with carts that smelled of pine and lemon, shoes that made the same careful cadence Oriole had taught his. Emails began their morning migrations. The city outside shrugged itself into glass. At 6:30, Oriole went downstairs to the loading dock to meet the catering trucks, because crises do not cancel breakfasts. He checked the bollards, confirmed the traffic flow, told a delivery driver which ramp didn't lie. He liked the way work kept happening after the night had tried to break it. He liked how hands could still shape a morning even after they had held a door against men who mistook keys for crowns. On his way back up, he paused at the freight elevator and pressed his palm against the old paint, feeling the big machine purr. You did good, he told it softly. You remembered how to listen. At 8:40, the summit floor filled with executives, partners, customers, and the bright hum of expensive optimism. The stage wore a huge screen that had not slept. The feed came alive, graphs and choruses of small numbers in military formation, a UI that had cost 6 teams their weekends. Tamsin stood behind the curtain with a laminated temporary badge that said crew, and an expression that said person. Cassandra approached her carrying 2 microphones. You'll do the handoff, she said. When the VP says and behind the scenes, you will step out and explain the rehearsal we didn't plan. Tamsin's throat went dry for the second time in 12 hours. He'll be furious. He'll be edited, Cassandra said, and squeezed her elbow once. Remember, the story is true. We don't embellish. We don't name Lionel. We don't turn the SRE into a villain. We describe the choices we made, the ones we almost didn't, and the ones we will make again. Why? Tamsin asked, small and large in the same breath. Why tell it at all? Because someone in the audience runs a building, Cassandra said. And tonight they might have our version of Lionel whispering that fear is a strategy. I'd like them to hear your voice louder. The lights dimmed. Music swelled. The VP did his practice thing with teeth and numbers. When his script reached the line, and behind the scenes, Cassandra stepped out before he could finish and handed Tamsin the second microphone with a look that said now. Tamsin walked onto the stage. The room became an ocean of faces that would never remember her tomorrow and would claim they had loved her always by next year. She inhaled. She did not tell herself she belonged. She told the truth. I'm Tamsin Orellana, she said, voice steady. I'm an intern. Last night we found a problem that wanted to be a disaster. We fixed it. Not because we are geniuses, though some of us are, but because we listened to a building and to each other. She glanced to the side wing where Oriole stood, arms crossed, new badge picked up that morning, its temp label printed with a title that made his chest feel like a door opening, Keeper of Place. This is what we built, Tamsin continued, pointing to the screen where the demo glided. But more important, this is how we will keep building, choosing the scary key, asking better questions, and keeping doors open for the right reasons. If this product helps you, thank the people you don't see on stages first. There was a moment of silence that felt like a collective intake of breath before a pool becomes water for the first time. Then applause, not the brittle kind summoned by logos, but the warmer kind that recognizes a human telling a human-sized truth. After, in the green room, the VP shook Tamsin's hand in a way that telegraphed the word brave while meaning brand. He smiled for a photo he would post with a caption his assistant would write. Cassandra took none of the credit and all of the responsibility. Oriole collected a dozen small nods from people who never saw him before and now would pretend they always had. He did not punish them for the past. He let the present be new. By noon, Lionel had been escorted from the building. HR's email spoke in past tense. Legal's email did not mention names. Cassandra's memo did. It named the values that had been tested, the doors that had been jimmied, the keys that would be smelted anew. Page 19 of the emergency manual was rewritten by 3 p.m. At 4, Cassandra asked Oriole to walk with her on the roof. The city's afternoon sat in glass and heat around them. A hawk circled as if reading the memo left on the air. I'll make it formal, she said. Title. Compensation. Authority. The Apprentice Program. But first, thank you. Not for holding the door. For holding the story in a way that lets everyone stand inside it without pretending we're taller than we are. I just know doors, he said, a little embarrassed by the hugeness of gratitude compared to the precision of what he had done. You know when not to open them, she said. That's rarer. He looked over the edge at the city. Thousands of doors, each with a way it wanted to be treated. We'll need more hinges, he said. Real ones. And a budget that respects screws. She laughed, and the laugh wasn't a CEO's. It was a person who had not found much to laugh about this year and had discovered a small, clean reason. Approved, she said. They stood in a silence that wasn't empty. Below them, the summit emptied into ride shares and next steps. The company continued. The building had new names for old rooms. Night returned like the second act of a play that trusts its audience now. Oriole walked the floors the way a captain walks a ship he built from other people's ships. He checked the stairwell centers and edges. He listened to the transformers sing. He returned once more to 32, put his palm on the server room glass, and apologized for the night before. The glass forgave him with his own face. On his way back to the elevator, he found Tamsin sitting cross-legged on a lobby bench, laptop open, ramen cup empty beside her, hair a little out of the order the stage lights had imposed. She looked up. I thought I would go home and sleep for a year, she said. But then I thought I would sit where yesterday started and say thank you to it. He sat across from her on a bench with a cushion that had never met a janitor on purpose. Bad days teach more, he said. This one taught everything, she said. Do you ever worry it'll teach too much? Not if you share the lesson before fear writes it in. He pointed at the mug. You should buy a bowl. A real one. Not because it's better. Because it's yours. She closed the laptop and smiled the way people smile when a stranger's sentence fits a drawer in their house they didn't know wanted organizing. Deal, she said. And you're really keeper of place now. He nodded, a little shy. It'll look good on a nameplate. Better on a key ring. They sat a while watching the building do its night shift ballet, lights dimming in departments that thought they were central, lights rising in departments that understood no one is. Somewhere a vacuum cleaner started and moved toward a stain it would gently argue with until it gave up. The revolving door turned exactly the right number of times. At 11, an email landed in both their inboxes. Cassandra. Subject, Thank you. Body, for sentences that named their work without inflating it and promised something most emails don't, a future that had noticed them. Tamsin looked up from her phone. Tomorrow, she asked. It'll just be, work? Work, he said with a quiet conviction he trusted now. And a better manual. She stood, slung her bag over one shoulder. Good night, Mr. Romani. Oriole, he said. If we're going to keep a building together, we should use names that get tired less easily. Good night, Oriole, she said. See you in the morning, we bought. He watched her go and felt a pride that had nothing to do with applause. He went to the closet on the mezzanine where the good mops were kept and made a list on a clipboard: keys to replace, hinges to oil, page 19 to reprint, training steps for apprentices who would learn how to feel a building the way a musician feels an instrument. The list was long. It made him happy. He locked up the closet and hung the keys from his belt. The weight felt honest. As he turned to leave, the hallway's glass threw him back himself for a second, the man who had held the door, who had asked for a title that told the truth about hands and places, who had measured fear and decided where to put it. He nodded to the reflection not because it was handsome but because it was earned. Down the corridor, a shadow paused at the corner. He didn't startle. He had a sense for which shadows belonged to the building and which did not. This one belonged. It stepped forward. Cassandra. I almost forgot, she said. One more thing. She held out a small envelope. Inside, a metal token twin to the one Tamsin had used, stamped with a date that belonged to the past and a promise that belonged to tomorrow. For your ring, she said. Not for computers. For doors that will need you to remind them who we are when someone tries to teach them otherwise. He took it. It lay heavy in his palm in a way that made his heart feel correctly weighted. Thank you, he said. Thank you, she answered, and for a moment they stood without roles. Two people who had stayed awake until the building learned some new words. When she left, Oriole slipped the token onto his key ring, between the brass master that had never liked him and the bent one that always had. He listened for the sound keys make when they meet a new friend. It was small and perfect. He headed for the exit and paused by the revolving door. The city beyond spilled neon and chatter, taxis clicking their conversations into intersections, a bus sighing like a person who has forgiven the day. He pushed the door and felt the building's last breath of the evening touch his cheek like a benediction. Rest, he told it. We'll keep you. He stepped out into the night he had earned. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.